The story of how Mercury came to be. Mercury, the winged messenger, the god of financial pain, commerce, eloquence, and communication, sat alone, stroking his long gray beard, pondering the universal woes that have placed the celestial gods in peril. His son, Akira, worked at the palace, a servant. Clicking his heavy cane on the ground, Mercury sat his old self up, wiggling off his throne. Mercury was a despicable person. Although he was a prodigious king, he took all things for granted, and was never thankful. He was a Scrooge, an odious, grumpy man living in his own world. He lived his days with servants prancing around him, doing his chores, feeding, clothing, and doing what Mercury should be doing himself. Mercury, prostrated in his thoughts, he wondered if he could have lived a better life, a life where he was not singular, where he had a wife, a life where he accomplished more. Mercury had a plan. He was going to do things himself. He didn't want to live like this anymore. He wasn't doing his job. He wasn't doing anything. Mercury fired all of his servants. He put Akira up for adoption. He was now a lonely man. Mercury washed his own dishes and went and got his own water from the well, clothed himself, did everything on his own. But after earning sagacity, he decided on something. Mercury left his home without anyone knowing. Mercury was going out to do something extraordinary, an adventure Mercury would never forget. Mercury had been sitting in his vivid palace for so long. His purple robes had been getting soggy and ripped. His body was getting worn down. He was becoming an old, wrinkly man. Mercury headed out to see the world around him. He trotted through the deserts, the fields, other villages, and he felt more alive than ever. He thought to himself, why couldn't I have done this earlier? Why couldn't I have lived my life better? He started to walk slower, and he hung his head down low. Later on, he decided to stop at a village. It was nighttime. Mercury rolled up his sleeves and knocked at a door. He fell into an abyss of darkness as he stared into his son's eyes. Mercury stared into Akira's perplexed countenance, covered up in an unrealistic, cheesy smile. A tear formed in Mercury's eye, creased like the Grand Canyon. He dropped solemnly to his knees as Akira started to cry simultaneously with his father. You were a genial man, Akira said to Mercury. Well, let's go home, together. But son, it's too dark to head out now. Let me stay here for the night. I'll take you home then. Night passed by, and the morning sun arose from the horizon. A placid sunset heated by the hut, and yawning filled the living room. Mercury soon got up, quivering in his silk purple robe. Shaking Akira, he slid acutely from his straw covers. Akira slightly shook as he scanned the room. Akira, the soldier who has been through enough pain, in which his father had put him in. He still loved his father, Mercury, more than ever. Standing up placidly, his toes made a creaking sound on the floor. Mercury grabbed Akira's hand and was ready to go. Akira slid his exquisite sandals onto his feet and was ready to travel with Mercury. We do not know what this road may await us, Akira, but I know that there will be stumbles and falls, twists and turns, but never give up. Now take my hand and let's journey home like the captains we are. And so they left the hut, not knowing where the wind would blow them, not knowing where the tides would take them, or where their feet would travel. And their journey was to get back home and live a better life. After miles of walking, there was an ocean where Akira and his dad would sail over like seagulls from a beach. Akira nodded his head, and Mercury followed suit. By the power of Mercury, we shall sail over this ocean, Mercury clamored from the top of his lungs. He was a speaker, screaming to everyone in the universe that he, and only he, could be able to hold this much power. Mercury, the winged messenger, grabbed his beloved son by the arm, gripping it tighter than the reins of a horse. And Mercury rose up into the sky, ready to fly across miles and miles of an ocean. And so Mercury flew with Akira, no word said during the trip, but like all things, this must come to an end. For someone who had made a mark on his life, who had lived a good life, he really should not be angry. For these two courageous men were over with. While Mercury started to loosen his grip on Akira, he started to cry. It wasn't a cry of, I love you, Akira. It was a cry for help, a cry that would be the last cry he ever cried. Mercury's hand slipped off of Akira's, and Akira began to fall. The cry was louder than an explosion now. He was sobbing. He was hopeless. He did not want Akira to die, or at least die alone. As Mercury stared back at Akira's poor soul, he saw a turbulent wave eat over him like the jaw of another human. So Mercury stopped. For you, Akira, he yelled, and he stopped flying. And at that moment, when he stopped in midair, he felt as if everything else stopped too. He floated down slowly like a feather to where the ocean would be his grave. He felt his scaly, wrinkly back ever so slightly graze the top of the water, and there Mercury drowned. For the gods among them thought his time had come, and like Akira, he was eaten over by the waves. Some of the gods among him looked down and saw what had happened. They thought about how disrespectful he was, and as they looked at the planet above, they noticed that there was something they should do. There shouldn't be a place where people can visit Mercury, a king without a heart. As they dragged his body up to the heavens, they threw his body into space. They left him floating so no one would ever remember him later on. And as his body spun around space, debris, dust, and other obstacles caught up around him, and the debris and dust started to turn him into a big ball. Unknown materials started to gather around him also. He was a magnet. Soon he became a big sphere, blending in with the planets. Ever since this incident, Mercury has been a planet, orbiting the sun like the others. The king's body is inside the planet, and Akira's body was never found. Some say that Akira is now one of the fish in the sea, but we do not know for sure.